On the buzz meter this Sunday, the Daily Beast revives an old allegation from a nasty divorce that Donald Trump, quote, raped his ex-wife Ivana, though she now says that's not true.
It's a total false thing put out by a website that's failing and losing a lot of money, and it's going down the tubes. And I think it's amazing what the press is allowed to get away with nowadays. And actually, you shouldn't even be asking the question after reading her statement. But if you want to ask it, it's fine.
Was this fair game for the Republican frontrunner, along with a story that he lashed out at a breast-pumping lawyer? Mike Huckabee pilloried by the press for refusing to apologize for opposing the Iran nuclear deal by invoking the Holocaust.
This was despicable and terrible. He should apologize.
It's a deal breaker. It should be over for him. You don't say that.
Do incendiary comments like these warrant so much coverage? 4 days to the first Fox debate. How much could it help or hurt Jeb, Scott, Marco, and the others going up against the Donald? Plus, Jon Stewart takes me on over a report on his secret White House meetings with the president. And that was precisely my point. I'm Howard Kurtz, and this is Media Buzz. I covered the titanic tabloid battle between Donald and Ivana Trump as a reporter in New York back in 1990, and boy, did it get ugly. Now that bitter divorce has been dragged into the presidential campaign by a Daily Beast story with this inflammatory headline: Ex-wife, Trump made me feel violated during sex. This based on a 1993 book citing a divorce deposition from Ivana Trump that used the word rape, which she soon walked back. A story that the first Mrs. Trump now says this week has no merit.
I think we've been treated very unfairly. I've been treated very unfairly, and it never happened, obviously. And actually, you shouldn't even be asking the question after reading her statement. But if you want to ask it, it's fine.
All right. Well, it's a fair question since it's all you're a public figure. Obviously, you're running for president. It's a question that was raised. We now have the statement
I'd
of your
say
wife.
it's a semi-fair question.
But the story has gotten plenty of media attention, especially after Trump's lawyer made threatening comments to the Daily Beast reporter who stands by the story.
You are under fire for writing a piece about a man's divorce, allegations made in it from 3 decades ago. Why did you think this was relevant?
Well, I think it's relevant because Donald Trump introduced his presidential campaign by making these accusations against Mexican immigrants, saying that many of the people who crossed the border were rapists.
Joining me now, Mercedes Schlapp, a columnist for U.S. News, political consultant, and a former Bush White House official. Susan Ferriccio, chief congressional correspondent for the Washington Examiner. And Fred Francis, a former NBC correspondent, now with 15seconds.com. All right, Mercy, my position is clear. The Daily Beast story was unfit to print. Your take?
You know, I feel that it was fair. It was a fair analysis of, they went over with the written deposition. That's where they got their source from. They presented both sides of the story. Then the story morphed into the Michael Cohen approach, which was that you really can't rape your spouse. So it really turned into these sort of two elements of the story.
But why is it fair to bring up, and by the way, Trump's personal life, 3 marriages, affairs, that's right. All fair game in my view.
Good.
But why is it fair to bring up something that was said in the heat of a divorce battle, which the woman who would be the victim, Ivana Trump, now says she fully supports Donald and this didn't happen?
That's right. And so I think that they did end up, just because it was written, it's what she said, and why not put it out there to the public for the public to decide? And she came out clearly with her statement, which I think at the end benefited Donald Trump in the sense of saying, look, I support my husband. I mean, I support my ex-husband, and you know, I think he would be a great president.
Fred, people say things, exaggerate things in the heat of contested divorces. Is this relevant in the 2016 presidential campaign?
Half of what is said about Donald Trump in this campaign has not been relevant. As a matter of fact, I think most of it's a black eye for journalism. I disagree with Mercedes.
How so?
Well, the fact is that they're bringing up stuff that's not really journalism, it's editorial. I mean, look at the front page of the Washington Post this morning. The Trump platform, because I said so. Well, that's not journalism. That's an editorial that they put above the fold on the front page, 1,868 words, and only one Trump supporter is quoted in an article that long. You see, so that's my point. My point is many reporters have gotten away from journalism in this coverage. I don't think Trump cares, frankly.
No, I actually would argue that it benefits Donald Trump to be unfairly attacked or even just attacked by the media, because a lot of Republicans, a lot of voters don't like the media. But Susan, Mercy mentioned Michael Cohen, the Trump lawyer who dealt with Daily Beast on this, Daily Beast where I once worked, by saying things to the reporter like, I'm going to mess up your life for as long as you're on the frickin' planet, and what I'm going to do is going to be blanking disgusting. He later apologized. Did that change the story?
No, but it should have. It's disturbing. The information is out there. Reporters can report it. We can all decide whether it was good judgment or made a good story, made a fair story, fine. But if the information is there and we want to report about it, that a lawyer is out there threatening, that's not the right thing. That's against our right to publish articles and be reporters. But
I mean, lawyers push back all the time against journalists.
Sure, but this is like a threat.
This was rather colorful,
that almost never ends well. But in this case, people are, again, don't seem to care. I mean, Trump seems to have this sort of Teflon coating when it comes to these kinds of situations where the public is saying, that's okay, we know that's how it is with the Trump camp, and they seem accepting of it.
Let's go to another deposition. This one is from 2011, reported on by the New York Times. A legal dispute. Trump was being questioned by a lawyer named Elizabeth Beck, who then asked to take a break so that she could use a breast pump. Let's take a look at what she says and what he says.
His face got red. He shook his finger at me and he screamed, "You're disgusting. You're disgusting." And he ran out of there.
She wanted to pump in front of me during a deposition.
The way she described it was that she wanted to take a break so she could take the pump out.
I may have said that's disgusting. I may have said something else. I thought it was terrible. She's a horrible person, knows nothing about me.
Who got the better of that exchange?
Oh, I believe Beck won that argument, hands down. You do not want to get between a mother and her breast pump, let me tell you. So I think...
That's your soundbite of the day, by the way.
No, but I think for Trump, it's very offensive. It started going through the Yahoo parenting.com, the mommy blogs. They all jumped on this, and I think it's something that, actually, more than the rape story, this is something that has legs that could, if he were to become the presidential nominee, something that could be brought up.
I thought it was a legitimate story. The New York Times went through a decade of depositions involving Trump lawsuits.
Yeah. Well, Trump long ago broke the code on how to make news, and he doesn't care what he says. I mean, you know that, Howie. I mean, when was the last time? I
interviewed him many times. Last time was last month.
The one time I interviewed him, I got halfway through the interview, and it was something I disagreed with him on, and he said, he said I was a kiss ass for the other side, and he walked away.
I think you're cleaning that up a little bit.
And I'm cleaning it up a little bit. But the fact is that he knows how to make news. That's what he's doing, and everybody's falling for it.
And when something like this happens, where he's under fire for comments or something like this deposition, he doesn't go hide in the bunker. He doesn't have his PR person put out a statement. He does more interviews, and he takes on the person who's criticizing him.
Yeah, I love that when he says, yeah, well, maybe I did say that. The thing is, the public is fairly divided, I'd say, on the public display of breastfeeding and breast pumps, that whole issue. And it was sort of a visceral reaction on his part. And we don't know if she was threatening to do it in front of him. She was the opposing lawyer in a deposition already. That's going to be an acrimonious relationship.
She said she just wanted to leave the room.
Well, she said that, but he said something different. And clearly the public doesn't care because Trump is not bombing in the polls.
I have one more soundbite for you. This one's not about breast pumps. This is about immigration. Donald Trump's interview with CNN's Dana Bash, in which he tried to describe what his approach would be to illegal immigration.
We have a law, right? You're supposed to come in legally. I would get people out, and I would have an expedited way of getting them back into the country so they can be legal.
Okay, hold on. Let me just hold on that point right there. Because when you say get people out, are you talking about like a mass deportation?
We don't even know who these people are.
But how do you
Nobody
find
even
them?
knows. We got to find them.
Does that hurt him?
It definitely complicates matters for him. I think that he's giving different answers sort of to different media outlets. So he starts with, we're building a wall, to now we're going to mass deport. Right. So we're going to mass deportation and then bring them back in an expedited process. And I think it does, because Ann Coulter came out and Lou Dobbs last week and basically said, I hope Trump doesn't change his position on immigration. So I think this is raising a bit of a red flag, especially for amongst conservatives.
This doesn't hurt him. I mean, we're 15, 16 months away from election. If he's the nominee, this doesn't hurt him. This plays. He has struck a nerve in this country.
But Fred, wouldn't it hurt another kind of candidate who suddenly said, we're going to take all the 11 million or 30 million legal immigrants, get them out of the country, and then bring them back?
And that has been said before. Yes, it would hurt another kind of candidate. Right. He is not another kind of candidate. I mean, and that's why these poll numbers are as they are. And reporters who look at these poll numbers and say that, oh, these are just sleepy summertime polls. Well, that's condescending. They're not sleepy summertime polls. This is a nerve that he's
in fact, there's just a new Wall Street Journal NBC poll out again shows Trump leading the Republican field with 19%. Another poll shows him ahead now in Iowa. He's already ahead in New Hampshire, and he was on 3 Sunday shows this morning: ABC, CBS, NBC.
Right.
He is sucking up that oxygen.
He's on everything but Sesame Street at this point. But here's the problem, though. Here's the problem. So we know what he thinks about Mexican immigrants. He's been pretty candid about that. We know what he thinks about breast pumps. Well, what about what he thinks about, the debt? How would he reduce federal spending? How would he deal with this trade deficit with China? He keeps talking about China. I beat China. Well, what's he going to do as president?
So you're
We're
saying
overlooking
he hasn't
that.
given enough policy specifics, but the voters at this point don't seem to care.
Well,
that was the point of the Washington Post piece.
The Washington Post piece is not getting to anything substantive either. They're still treating him, as I've said before, as a novelty candidate who's out there sort of as a character, not as a real person, a real candidate.
I think that he really is, as Fred says, touching a nerve with these voters. I mean, you go across the country just talking to activists, and they're very much intrigued by him. But again, the key is going to be that debate and how he's setting these low expectations and where the bar is. But I think that's going to be really where the race might start. I think these polls are still too early on. It's not very indicative of what's going to happen by the end of the year as we enter Iowa.
That's conventional thinking. I disagree.
Who knows?
What's fascinating to me is all these pundits who've dismissed him as a joke, a clown, a sideshow, now finally having to grapple with why is Donald Trump connecting with at least part of the Republican base. And every time he says something or gives an interview where he appears to have a misstep, this is it. He's imploding. The summer fling is over, and it's not happening. In fact, all this criticism, I think, helps Donald Trump. You set me up for the debate tease, so we'll do that in a moment. But don't forget to send me a tweet on Twitter. That's at Howard Kurtz. Or you can email us, mediabuzz@foxnews.com. When we come back, this week's Fox News debate and the second forum for those who don't make the cut. Will it transform this campaign? And later, Jon Stewart hits back at me over his secret meetings with the president. Our final dust-up in moments.